Hello and welcome to Unsourced Wall. My name is Elvis, and as always, I am your host. Alright, so this is going to be kind of a fun episode because, well, I didn't really read anything this week, and I know the Hellfire Gala already started. I'll be covering it at every issue that came out since then. Next week, there's a lot of news that I think is actually really fun, or at least one particular news topic, and let's just get right into it. That is, well, Jupiter's Legacy, the Netflix show, has been canceled. Now, if you've been listening to the several moments we've given it in the Comics Code Authority podcast, which I've been linking below, you know that I have no love for that show. Especially my review on this channel, I think it's one of the worst adaptations I've ever seen. It is terrible. It is incompetent. It is a complete failure at everything it does and sets out to do. And now it's canceled, which is hilarious because of how bald-faced a lot of these I'm going to call them lies, even though people have come up with ideas like, oh, it's just Netflix using really creative rubrics to report the numbers. I'm calling them lies because you don't get for like 3 weeks straight number one spot in the world and then get canceled because no one's watching. All right. That's a lie. So after all the lies cut up with them, Netflix has pulled the plug on the show, and it's, I couldn't be happier because I like the comics, but the show was a complete disgrace. What's funny is that they've now, through Lemire, apparently tried to pivot it as Jupiter's Legacy was always meant to be a miniseries. It's an anthology show. It's the first chapter of this anthology. The second chapter is going to be Super Crooks miniseries. And no, not the anime one that they're already making, a live-action Super Crooks miniseries as part of this Jupiter's Legacy anthology. And that's amazing because of how stupidly obvious a lie that is. I mean, why would you adapt the same story twice? Super Crooks is 4 issues long, and it's a very stretched out 4 issues. An anime that's like 8 episodes, I think that's confirmed, that's coming out later this year, well, that's enough. I don't know how you could get out of adapting the same the same story twice in like a year. But that's what they're doing, and it shows they had no fallback plan. They really thought they were going to get like 12, 13 seasons out of this show, and it's embarrassing that they didn't. Apparently, they spent like $200 million on the first season alone, which is embarrassing because I thought it was really cheap looking, and that like, hey, maybe they just didn't have the budget, but apparently they had $200 million at their disposal, and yeah, it's embarrassing, and they should be ashamed. But yeah, apparently, the New Gods movie has been canceled. This has been canceled. The Flash is ending. Apparently, that's been confirmed by Candace Patton herself. And it's the year of me continuing to win. All right, so, and not only that, I do want to brush on this, not to toot my own horn, but apparently I did this tweet thread dissecting the main core issues I had with the show, and it ended up getting more engagement than any of the tweets that Netflix sponsored and promoted from the creative team, from the cast, and from like Mark Millar and from their own accounts ever got. And that's it's amazing to me. I didn't even get that much traction on it, but it was still enough to put me over them. And that shows just how little people cared about this series. But moving along, like I said, I didn't really read anything this week, but something else came out that I thought would be fun to talk about. It is the first season of Netflix's Sweet Tooth show, which for some reason isn't on HBO Max, even though it's a DC property. I guess Lemire was able to, cut a better deal. And good for him, because unlike Jupiter's Legacy, Sweet Tooth Season 1 is actually really good, despite being completely different. And I don't mean completely different in any way that matters. It's the same in all the ways that truly matter. But it is a complete 180 in terms of tone and aesthetic and atmosphere. While the show was like this grungy, apocalyptic, dystopia kind of comic and story, the show, according to the showrunners and producers and what have you, approached this as a modern fairy tale, and the show really kind of exudes that tone. It's almost Pushing Daisies-esque, that kind of Brian Fuller sensibility, where it's like it's lighthearted, it's a little bit of a adventurous romp, a little bit like little bit self-aware, so it's not like fully saccharine, although parts do get saccharine, and it's very fantastical and very comfy and cute. And that's really the only big change. That's the biggest change, because everything else that happens kind of follows through from that, all the other changes. But at its core, at the story core, at the narrative and the character core, it's it's kept most of what's important. It's kept most of what makes Sweet Tooth, and what makes the story function going forward and even now. And that's such a great thing to kind of behold after something like Jupiter's Legacy. And it shows just how to do a proper adaptation, even if you want to do your own thing. The biggest thing I want to just really kind of set out is that even though this first season tackles like the first like 5 to 6 issues of the comic, the first arc, it also kind of sets itself some time to expand and explore things that didn't happen in the comic. And what I mean by that is the first 5 or 6 issues is a very breezy read, but this is like 8 1-hour long episodes. So it didn't really need that much, but it spends most of the rest of the time expanding upon, giving origins and backstory episodes and spotlight plots to several of the other characters that would become important in like the future arcs. And I think that's really the best way to play upon it if you're adapting something that's a little bit compressed. Like either you're going to try and jam in as much as you can and consolidate as much as you can, like Invincible did, the Invincible cartoon on Amazon Prime, or you can do it this way, where you're actually following the story as kind of straightforward as you can, but use the extra time to set up things that are going to happen. And this one actually does a lot of that really successfully. Now, it might irk hardcore fans of the comic. I love the comic myself, I really do. But I did really get a kick out of the fact that they were actually kind of willing to go as far as they did, even if they had to change a lot of the literal details. Like, not even really a spoiler warning here, because I'm not really going to go into detail, but this first season actually delves into like the origin issues that Lemire did way later on for Gus's dad and Jeopard. And while I really enjoyed that, they even like recreate panels from those issues. It's really amazing. But those issues are insanely heart-wrenching and horrifying and depressing. And like I said, this show is trying to go for a fairy tale tone, so they have to lighten the hell of that up. But it still retains some bite because they are a little bit more intense than the rest of the show is willing to allow itself to be. I mean, it even has like Peter Pan's Lost Boys, a set of characters in here. It's very optimistic and sunshiny at the heart of it. So those issues and those plots, I was actually pretty astounded they were able to sneak them into this season and in important places that had maximum impact. It's efficient and it's competent. It's strange seeing a competent adaptation from Netflix, so fingers crossed. Other than that, there are things I don't like about it on any level. I think that there are some characters that didn't need to exist yet, or that shouldn't have existed, and it really detracts from a lot more of the interesting aspects of the comic that still seem to be set up. Like, I think the show is actually going to do these things, but by having these other elements included, it'll feel less raw and emotional when we get to them, which is a shame. And I do think that, like, yes, it gets a little bit too saccharine at times. It feels a little bit too blandly sweet. And again, I like the comfy tone of the show. I do. I think that it's great, kind of rainy day kind of watch. But this is an apocalyptic world, and sometimes it works at odds. It feels like nothing really happened, and you're not willing to suspend your disbelief that much. And that really detracts from a lot of things that should be heavy hitting. But overall, I really enjoyed the show. I think that's really entertaining. I thought the cast was great, and I thought a lot of the story changes were functional and really got me excited for future seasons that are able to pay that off, because even though it goes in a wild direction, like tonally, I mean, I just can't wait to see when these things kind of come to fruition. Especially with a character like Dr. Singh, who got this incredible B plot. It gives him his own origin story. That is something that I really can't imagine won't play into amplifying his character arc that we see in the comics, that we don't really see have too much impact, because it feels very wishy-washy as a payoff. It feels like an afterthought, but now it's at the forefront, and I was hooked. Overall, it's a great season. I don't know if it's going to catch on. It has gotten some buzz. It was trending for a little bit, but it is a very awkward show. Like, it's an awkward show. You're dealing with like half animal kids and apocalyptic fairy tale tone. It doesn't really gel together all that well. That's why I think it would probably work better on HBO Max, where they have like stuff like Doom Patrol, and I think that would work like really well alongside that, like alternating days, release this one, release that one, that kind of thing. They would bounce off each other really well. So I don't know if it's getting a second season. I know it's being produced by Robert Downey Jr. and his wife, and that's amazing. I think they did a really great job, and I hope they're proud of being one of the pushers for this thing. But I don't think it's gonna catch on. If it does, then great. I can't wait for a second season. But overall, I gotta give it a number score of like 7 out of 10, and 1 thumb up, 1 thumb slightly askew. I had a great time, and yeah, can't wait for more. Anyway, that's really all I want to talk about this week. Justice Jupiter's Legacy, news, and Sweet Tooth, which I heartily recommend. I recommend the comic as well. Like, read the comic, watch the show. They're different enough to be enjoyed separately and together, honestly. Had a great time. Just want to say thank you so much for listening. Hope everyone out there is still enjoying themselves, still being safe, but also that, returning to normal, returning to some sort of calmness is going well for all of you. So stay safe, stay healthy. I want to give a shout out to cover artists for a show at DOTEMCE. Please check them out. They're amazing. And have a great one. Have a great weekend. And see you again next time.